The unexpected meeting. Jake Walker was not a hero. He was just an ordinary human trying to survive in the vast galaxy. Earth had joined the Galactic Alliance only 50 years ago, and humans were still considered newcomers. Jake worked small jobs at the interstellar market on the space station Orion 9. He carried boxes, cleaned stalls, and sometimes helped alien traders with their goods. It wasn't much, but it kept him fed and gave him a place to sleep. One busy afternoon, Jake was rushing through the crowded market, trying to finish his deliveries. Strange alien creatures filled the market, buying and selling exotic items from different planets. Jake was used to the noise, the strange smells, and the weird foods. Nothing surprised him anymore, or so he thought. As he turned a corner, he almost tripped over an old alien woman struggling with several heavy bags. She was short and thin, with wrinkled purple skin and glowing silver eyes. She wore long robes covered in strange symbols that shimmered under the market lights. Jake had seen many aliens before, but something about her felt different. "Need some help, ma'am?" Jake asked, smiling kindly. The old alien woman looked up, surprised. "Oh, young man, that is very kind of you," she replied in a soft, musical voice. "These bags are heavier than they look." Jake didn't hesitate. He picked up the bags, which were indeed much heavier than he expected. "Where to?" he asked, adjusting his grip. The alien woman chuckled softly. "My home is not far. Follow me." As Jake walked beside her, he noticed many aliens whispering and staring. Some even looked nervous. Jake frowned. Weird. Why is everyone acting so strange? But he shrugged it off. Maybe they were not used to seeing a human help an alien elder. "What's your name, young man?" the alien woman asked as they walked. Jake Walker," he replied. "And you?" She smiled gently. "You may call me Valiza." "Nice to meet you, Valiza," Jake said cheerfully. "So, what's in these bags? Rocks? They're so heavy." Valiza laughed softly. "Oh, just some important items. Nothing you need to worry about." Jake chuckled. "Fair enough." They reached a quiet part of the station where fewer aliens lived. Valiza led Jake to a small, beautiful home filled with glowing plants, floating crystals, and strange alien technology. Jake placed the bags down and stretched his arms. "Thank you, Jake," Valiza said warmly. Few would offer help to an old woman in this galaxy. Jake smiled. "No problem. Happy to help." "Please, sit. Have some tea before you go," she offered. Jake hesitated but nodded. "Sure, why not?" As they sat, Valiza prepared a pot of steaming blue tea. Jake looked around the room. The artifacts and decorations were unlike anything he had seen before. There was a soft hum in the air, almost like the room itself was alive. "Nice place you got here," Jake said, sipping the tea. It tasted sweet and calming. "Thank you," Valiza replied. "Tell me, Jake, do you believe in destiny?" Jake laughed. "Destiny? I don't know. I just take life one day at a time." Valiza smiled knowingly. "Sometimes destiny finds us when we least expect it." Jake chuckled. "Sounds deep." Suddenly, the door slid open and a young alien woman entered. She had the same purple skin and silver eyes as Valiza, but stood tall and graceful. Her long dark hair shimmered like the night sky, and her sharp features made her look both beautiful and fierce. She wore a sleek black suit with silver patterns that matched her glowing eyes. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "Grandmother, who is this human?" the young woman asked, crossing her arms. "Elira, my dear," Valiza said with a soft smile. "This is Jake. He kindly helped me carry my bags." Elira raised an eyebrow. "A human helping you? Strange." Jake scratched the back of his head. Hi. I'm Jake." Elira barely acknowledged him. "Why is he here?" "I invited him for tea," Valiza replied calmly. Elira sighed. "Grandmother, You know it's dangerous to trust strangers. Valiza chuckled. Jake is no stranger. Not anymore. Jake felt awkward. I should probably go. Nonsense, Valiza interrupted. Jake, did you know that in our culture, helping an elder in need is a very special act? Jake blinked. No. Valiza's eyes sparkled. It means you have earned great honor. And it also means you must marry the elder's granddaughter. Jake almost choked on his tea. Wait. What? Elira's eyes widened in shock. What? Valiza's smile grew wider. Yes, by ancient Axarene law, Jake, you must marry my granddaughter, Elira. Jake stood up, waving his hands. Hold on. I didn't sign up for this. Elira glared at her grandmother. This is ridiculous. Valiza sipped her tea calmly. Rules are rules. Before Jake could protest further, a strange beeping sound filled the room. Valiza's face turned serious. Trouble, she whispered. A red hologram appeared, showing masked figures in armor approaching the house. Jake felt his heart race. Who are they? Jake asked, panic rising in his voice. Elira's eyes narrowed. Mercenaries, and they're not here for tea. Valiza stood up, her voice calm but firm. Jake, Elira, you must leave now. But why? Jake asked. Elira grabbed Jake's arm. Because they're here for me. And if they catch us, we're both dead. The door shook as the mercenaries tried to break in. Jake looked at Elira, then at Valiza. This day just keeps getting weirder, Jake muttered as he followed Elira through a hidden exit, not knowing that his life had just changed forever. An unwanted proposal. Jake's heart pounded as he ran through the narrow corridors of Oran 9 with Elira leading the way. Behind them, the sound of heavy boots echoed as the mercenaries chased them. Jake wasn't sure what was more shocking, the fact that armed men wanted them dead, or that he was now supposed to be married to an alien princess. This can't be happening, Jake muttered under his breath. Move faster, human. Elira snapped without turning around. Not all of us have alien speed. Jake shot back, struggling to keep up. They slipped through a hidden door, and Elira quickly locked it behind them. Jake leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Okay, he panted. Can someone explain why my life just turned into a bad sci-fi movie? Elira glared at him. This isn't a joke. Those mercenaries are after me. Jake raised an eyebrow. Why? Did you forget to pay your space taxes? Elira rolled her eyes. This isn't funny. They want something I have. Jake frowned. What do you have? Before Elira could answer, the door behind them shook violently. Jake's eyes widened. They're gonna break through. Come on, Elira ordered, grabbing his arm and pulling him down another corridor. They finally stopped in a quiet storage room. Jake collapsed onto a crate, catching his breath. Elira stood near the door, checking a small holographic device. Okay, Jake said, raising his hands. Time out. Who are you? Why are those guys after you? And why does your grandma want us to get married? Elira sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. I'm Elira Valiza, granddaughter of Grand Matron Valiza, leader of the Tyrene people. Jake blinked. Wait, your grandma's a big deal. She's the head of one of the most powerful alien clans in the galaxy, Elira explained. And that makes me important. Okay, Jake nodded slowly. But why do these mercenaries care about you? Elira hesitated. Because I have something they want. A map. A map that leads to a lost Cyrene weapon. Jake's eyes widened. A weapon. Like a big gun. Elira gave him an annoyed look. It's more than just a gun. It's an ancient device with the power to change the fate of the galaxy. Jake let out a nervous laugh. Great. So I helped an old lady carry some bags, and now I'm stuck with a princess, a deadly map, and a bunch of guys with guns trying to kill me. Perfect. Elira smirked. Welcome to my life. Jake shook his head. And the marriage thing. Alira's face darkened. Serene law is complicated. Helping an elder in need is a sacred act. It shows loyalty and kindness, qualities my people respect. As a reward, the elder can bind the helper to their family through marriage. Jake groaned. So, because I carried some bags, I'm your husband. Technically, yes, Alira muttered. Jake laughed bitterly. This is insane. We just met. Alira crossed her arms. Trust me, I don't like this any more than you do. Great, Jake replied sarcastically. So, how do we get out of this? Alira sighed. We don't. Not unless you want to break Cyrene law and start a war between our species. Jake rubbed his temples. Okay, so let me get this straight. We're stuck together. People want to kill us because of some map. And we have no choice but to pretend we're married. Alira's lips twitched into a small, reluctant smile. Looks like it. Jake chuckled softly. I've had worse Mondays. Suddenly, Alira's device beeped. She glanced at it and cursed under her breath. They're tracking us. Jake's smile vanished. What do we do? We need to leave the station, Alira said firmly. I have a ship hidden in Dock 17. If we can get there, we'll be safe. For now. Jake stood up. Lead the way, princess. Alira shot him a glare. Don't call me that. Got it, Jake replied with a smirk. Bossy alien lady it is. As they carefully made their way through the station, Jake couldn't help but ask, so, this weapon, what happens if these mercenaries find it first? Alira's face grew serious. If they get it, the galaxy will burn. Jake swallowed hard. No pressure, right? They reached the main hall leading to Dock 17, but Jake froze when he saw a group of mercenaries blocking the path. Oh, problem, he whispered. Alira peeked around the corner. There's too many of them. Jake scratched his head. Okay, genius alien, what's the plan? Alira smirked. Follow my lead. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Alira grabbed his hand and pulled him into the open. There you are, my darling. She shouted loudly, catching the mercenaries' attention. Jake blinked. What? Alira leaned in close, whispering, play along. She then wrapped her arms around Jake and kissed him on the cheek. Jake's face turned bright red. We got lost on the way to our honeymoon suite, Alira said sweetly to the mercenaries. Could you point us in the right direction? The mercenaries looked confused. One of them, clearly the leader, frowned. We're looking for a Cyrene girl and a human. Jake forced a smile. Cyrene girl? No. My wife here is from, but, Xenar 4. Right, honey. Alira shot him a glare but quickly smiled at the mercenaries. Yes, my love. Now shall we go? The mercenaries, still puzzled, let them pass. As they hurried towards the dock, Jake whispered, Did we just fool them? Don't get used to it, Alira replied, dragging him forward. Jake smirked. Admit it, you're starting to like me. Alira rolled her eyes. Let's just get out of here before I change my mind. Jake grinned. Married life's gonna be fun. A dangerous pursuit. Jake and Alira raced through the narrow corridors of Orion 9, heading towards Dock 17. The alarm blared across the station, warning everyone of the intruders. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He never imagined his day would end with him running for his life with an alien princess. Are we almost there? Jake gasped, struggling to keep up with Alira's quick pace. Close, Alira replied, her eyes scanning every corner. We just need to. Before she could finish, laser shots fired from behind them, hitting the metal walls with loud sparks. Jake ducked instinctively. They found us. Jake shouted. Brilliant observation, human. Alira snapped, pulling out a small blaster from her belt. She fired back at the mercenaries chasing them, forcing them to take cover. Jake's eyes widened. You had a gun this whole time. I didn't think I'd need it, Alira replied, grabbing Jake's hand. "Come on." They dashed through the hallways, dodging shots. Jake tried not to trip as his mind raced. Why did I have to help that old lady? They turned a corner and found themselves face to face with two more mercenaries. Jake froze, but Alira didn't. She kicked the first mercenary's weapon out of his hands and elbowed him in the face. The second mercenary aimed at Jake. "Watch out," Jake yelled, grabbing a nearby tool and throwing it at the mercenary's head. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The mercenary fell with a grunt. "Nice throw," Alira said, slightly impressed. "Yeah, well, humans are full of surprises," Jake replied, trying to catch his breath. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed through the station. "Alira Valisa, surrender now, and we might let your human pet live." Jake frowned. "Pet? Did he just call me a pet?" Alira's face hardened. "That's Kale, their leader." "Great," Jake muttered. "He sounds charming." Kale's voice continued. "You can't run forever, princess. Give us the map, and we'll let you both go." Alira clenched her fists. "Liar." Jake glanced at her. "So, what's the plan?" "We keep moving," Alira said firmly. They finally reached Dock 17, where a sleek black spaceship waited. Jake whistled. "Nice ride." "Get in," Alira ordered as she opened the hatch. Jake jumped in and strapped himself into a seat. Alira sat in the pilot's chair, pressing buttons as the ship hummed to life. Do you know how to fly this thing?" Jake asked nervously. "Of course," Alira replied confidently. "Hold on." The ship lifted off the ground just as the mercenaries burst into the dock, firing at them. Alira expertly maneuvered the ship, dodging the shots and flying out of the station. Jake sighed in relief. "We made it." "Not yet," Alira warned. "They'll follow us." Jake looked out the window, and sure enough, several mercenary ships were chasing them through space. "Oh, come on," Jake groaned. "Give us a break." Alira focused, her hand steady on the controls. "Can you shoot?" Jake blinked. "Me? Shoot? I played video games once." "Good enough," Alira replied, activating the ship's weapons. "Shoot them." Jake hesitated but grabbed the controls for the ship's blasters. Here goes nothing. He fired wildly, missing most of his shots. "I'm terrible at this." "Just keep them busy," Alira shouted, weaving through the stars. One of Jake's shots finally hit a mercenary ship, sending it spinning out of control. "Did you see that?" Jake exclaimed. "I actually hit one." "Less talking, more shooting," Alira yelled. Jake focused, firing at the chasing ships while Alira performed sharp turns and sudden boosts, trying to lose them. The chase seemed endless until Alira spotted an asteroid field up ahead. "Hold tight," she warned. Jake's eyes widened. "Wait, we're going in there." "That's crazy." "Trust me," Alira smirked. She plunged the ship into the asteroid field, dodging massive rocks as they floated in all directions. The mercenaries followed, but one by one, they crashed into the asteroids, unable to keep up with Alira's piloting skills. Jake laughed nervously. "Remind me never to doubt you again." "Smart choice," Alira replied. Finally, the last mercenary ship gave up and turned back. Alira guided their ship out of the asteroid field and into the quiet emptiness of space. Jake let out a deep breath. "We're alive." "For now," Alira replied, setting the ship on autopilot. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. Jake looked at her. "So, what now?" Alira opened her eyes, her expression serious. "Now we figure out how to stop Kale and keep the map safe." Jake hesitated. "What's so important about this map?" Alira looked away. "It doesn't just lead to a weapon. It leads to my grandmother's hidden treasure, something that could save my people or destroy the galaxy." Jake's eyes widened. "Wait, treasure? Like space gold?" Alira rolled her eyes. "It's not about gold. It's about power." Jake chuckled nervously. Well, I guess I'm stuck with you now. Elira gave him a small smirk. Looks like it, husband. Jake groaned. Please stop calling me that. Elira laughed softly for the first time, but her face quickly turned serious. Cal won't stop. He'll keep coming for us. Jake nodded. Then we'll have to stop him first. Elira raised an eyebrow. We? Jake grinned. Hey, we're married now, remember? We're in this together. Elira shook her head but couldn't hide her smile. Humans, full of surprises. Jake leaned back. Yeah, well, you better get used to it. As the ship drifted through space, both Jake and Elira knew their adventure was just beginning. Secrets of the map. The hum of the spaceship's engine filled the quiet cabin. Jake leaned back in his seat, still trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. Alien mercenaries, a hidden map, and an unexpected marriage to a royal alien princess. Life had definitely taken a wild turn. Elira sat across from him, focused on the glowing holographic map hovering above her wrist. Her sharp eyes scanned every detail, and her fingers moved swiftly, trying to decode the complex symbols. Jake watched her silently for a moment before breaking the silence. So, what exactly are you looking for? Elira sighed, not looking up. The map is ancient. It's encoded with layers of information, and it's not easy to read. Jake leaned forward. But you can decode it, right? Elira nodded slowly. Yes, but it will take time. Jake rubbed his temples. Great, time. The one thing we don't have. Elira glanced at him. You don't have to stay. You could leave any time. Jake chuckled. Leave and go where? I don't exactly have a home waiting for me. Besides, I kind of like living. Elira smirked. Well, staying with me doesn't exactly guarantee safety. Jake grinned. Yeah, but it's definitely more interesting. Elira shook her head with a small smile and turned back to the map. Jake stood up and wandered around the ship, curious about his new surroundings. He noticed a shelf filled with strange alien artifacts and devices. What's all this stuff? Jake asked, picking up a small glowing cube. Careful with that. Elira warned. It's a memory cube. It holds data from my family's history. Jake quickly put it back. Oops, my bad. Elira sighed. My grandmother collected many things over the years. She believed knowledge was the most valuable treasure. Jake sat back down. Your grandma seems interesting. Elira chuckled softly. She is wise, strong, and stubborn. Jake laughed. Sounds familiar. Elira shot him a playful glare. Very funny. Jake leaned forward. So this map, what exactly does it lead to? Elira's face grew serious. The heart of Syra. Jake blinked. The what? The heart of Syra. Elira repeated. It's an ancient artifact created by my ancestors. It holds immense energy, enough to power entire planets or destroy them. Jake whistled. No wonder those mercenaries want it. Elira nodded. If Kale gets his hands on it, he could control the galaxy. Or worse, destroy it. Jake frowned. And your grandmother hid it? Yes, Elira replied. After the Great Cyrene War, she feared it would fall into the wrong hands. So she created this map and scattered its pieces across the galaxy. Jake scratched his head. Wait, pieces? You mean this map isn't complete? Elira shook her head. No, we have one part. We need to find the rest. Jake groaned. Of course, nothing's ever easy. Suddenly, the ship's console beeped. Elira quickly checked the screen. Good news or bad news? Jake asked. Elira smiled. Good news. I found the location of the next piece. Jake grinned. Nice. Where is it? Elira's smile faded. The Forbidden Nebula. Jake's grin disappeared. Wait, why does that sound bad? Elira leaned back. Because it is. The Forbidden Nebula is dangerous. Few who enter ever return. Jake rubbed his face. Awesome. Just awesome. Elira smirked. Scared human. Jake chuckled nervously. No? Maybe? Okay, yes. Elira laughed softly. At least you're honest. Jake sighed. So what's the plan? Elira stood up, her eyes determined. We get the map piece before Kale does. No matter the risk. Jake nodded. All right. Let's do it. Elira raised an eyebrow. You're really staying. Jake grinned. Hey, someone's got to keep you out of trouble. Elira shook her head with a smile. Fine. But don't slow me down. Jake laughed. Deal. As they prepared to enter the Forbidden Nebula, Jake couldn't help but feel nervous. But deep down, he also felt something else. Excitement. This was the adventure he never knew he wanted. Elira glanced at him as the ship sped through space. Jake? Yeah. Thank you, she said softly. Jake smiled. For what? For staying, she replied. Jake chuckled. Anytime, princess. Elira rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. Together, they were ready to face whatever dangers awaited them. Pretending to be in love. Jake stared out the window of the spaceship as the stars streaked past. His mind was racing, thinking about the journey ahead. The Forbidden Nebula sounded terrifying, but something about this adventure thrilled him. Beside him, Elira was busy setting the coordinates for their next destination. So, Jake said, trying to break the silence, how bad is this nebula, really? Elira glanced at him. Imagine a storm filled with lightning, asteroid fields, and creatures that see ships as snacks. Jake's eyes widened. Fantastic. Can't wait. Elira smirked. Don't worry. I've been through worse. Jake chuckled. Yeah, like being stuck with me. Elira gave him a playful glare. Exactly. Suddenly, an alarm beeped on the console. Elira's face grew serious as she checked the screen. What now? Jake asked. Elira frowned. We've got company. Jake peered at the screen. A large cruiser was approaching fast. Cal. Elira shook her head. No. This ship belongs to the Tyran Syndicate. They're bounty hunters. Bounty hunters. Jake groaned. Let me guess. They want you too. Elira sighed. No. They want the bounty Kale placed on me. Jake leaned back. Great. So we got mercenaries and bounty hunters after us. Love that for us. Elira quickly scanned the nearby systems. There's a space station nearby. If we dock there, we can hide. Jake grinned. Good plan. Let's do it. Elira set the course, and within minutes they docked at a bustling space station. The station was filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes, trading, drinking, and arguing. As they stepped out of the ship, Elira whispered, We need to blend in. Jake nodded. Got it. But before he could take another step, Elira grabbed his hand. Jake blinked. What are you doing? Pretending. Elira replied with a smirk. Newlyweds always attract less attention. Jake's face turned red. Wait, we're pretending to be in love now. Elira shrugged. It's the easiest cover. Jake chuckled nervously. This just keeps getting better. They walked through the station hand in hand. Jake felt awkward, but Elira seemed perfectly calm. Aliens around them barely gave them a second glance. Jake whispered, You're really good at this pretending thing. Elira smirked. Years of practice. They entered a small cafe to hide for a while. Jake ordered something that looked like coffee, though he wasn't sure. Elira scanned the room, making sure no one suspicious was nearby. Jake took a sip and immediately gagged. Ugh, what is this? Elira chuckled. Sirene brew, stronger than human coffee. Jake coughed. Yeah, no kidding. Suddenly, Jake noticed a group of bounty hunters entering the cafe. His eyes widened. A problem at 6 o'clock. Elira turned slightly and cursed under her breath. We need to leave. Now. Before they could move, One of the bounty hunters spotted them. "Hey, that's them." Jake grabbed Alira's hand. "Time to go." They dashed out of the cafe, with the bounty hunters close behind. Jake's heart pounded as they weaved through the crowded station. "Do you always get into this much trouble?" Jake asked, dodging an alien carrying a stack of boxes. "Only when I'm with humans," Alira shot back with a grin. Jake laughed. "Fair." They found a narrow alley and ducked into it, pressing themselves against the wall. The bounty hunters ran past without noticing them. Jake let out a deep breath. That was close. Alira nodded. "Too close." Jake looked at her, curiosity in his eyes. "So, is this what your life is like? Always running?" Alira hesitated. "Not always. But since I found the map, yes." Jake frowned. "That must be exhausting." Alira shrugged. "It's all I know." Jake looked thoughtful. "You know, you don't always have to do everything alone." Alira met his gaze. "I'm not alone now, am I?" Jake grinned. "Nope. Stuck with me, remember?" Alira smiled softly. "Unfortunately." Jake chuckled. "Hey." They headed back to the docking bay, making sure to avoid any bounty hunters. As they reached their ship, Jake asked, "So, this pretending to be married thing, how long do we keep it up?" Alira smirked. "Until we're safe, or until you annoy me too much." Jake laughed. "Guess I better behave then." As they boarded the ship, Alira thought about Jake's words. Maybe, just maybe, having someone by her side wasn't so bad after all. Jake, on the other hand, realized something new about himself. Maybe he was braver than he thought. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't mind being stuck with a bossy alien princess after all. The Forbidden Nebula. The ship hummed softly as Jake and Alira sat in the cockpit, staring at the swirling mass of colors ahead. The Forbidden Nebula was a sight to behold. Vibrant blues, purples, and reds danced across the vast expanse. But Jake felt more fear than wonder. "Are we really going in there?" Jake asked, his voice filled with nervousness. Alira, focused on the controls, replied calmly, "We don't have a choice." Jake chuckled nervously. "Right, because a giant, deadly space storm sounds like the perfect vacation spot." Alira smirked but didn't take her eyes off the nebula. "Scared, human." Jake scoffed. "Scared? Me?" Taft. "Yeah, absolutely." Alira chuckled softly. "At least you're honest." As they approached the nebula, alarms began to beep. Jake glanced at the flashing lights. Is it supposed to do that?" "The ship's sensors are struggling," Alira explained. "The nebula's energy messes with electronics." "Awesome," Jake muttered. "So we're flying blind?" "Not exactly," Alira replied. "But close." Jake sighed and buckled his seatbelt. "I really need to rethink my life choices." Alira smiled. "Too late now." The ship entered the nebula, and immediately, Jake felt the turbulence. The ship shook violently as Alira gripped the controls tightly, navigating through the dense clouds of gas and debris. "Hold on," Alira shouted over the noise. I'm holding. Jake yelled back, gripping his seat with all his strength. Suddenly, a large asteroid appeared in front of them. Alira swerved just in time, barely avoiding a collision. "Didn't see that one," Jake exclaimed, his heart racing. "Neither did I," Alira admitted. Jake groaned. "Great." As they continued deeper into the nebula, the shaking lessened slightly. Jake let out a deep breath. "Is it too late to turn around?" "Yes," Alira replied firmly. "We're close now." Jake frowned. "Close to what?" Alira activated a small hologram, showing a blinking point deep within the nebula. "The next piece of the map is here." Jake raised an eyebrow. "In this mess?" Alira nodded. "It's hidden on an ancient Terrene outpost." Jake rubbed his temples. "Of course it is." Suddenly, the ship's radar beeped again. Jake's eyes widened. Elira, we've got company. Elira glanced at the screen and cursed under her breath. Cal's ships. They followed us. Jake groaned. Why can't these guys take a hint? They won't stop until they have the map, Elira replied, her face serious. Jake sighed. So, what's the plan? Elira smirked. We get to the outpost before they do. Sounds simple, Jake replied sarcastically. Let's do it. Elira pushed the ship's speed to its limit, weaving through the nebula as Cal's ships fired at them. Jake grabbed the weapons controls and fired back. Come on, Jake muttered, trying to aim through the thick clouds. One of Cal's ships exploded under Jake's fire. Yes, he shouted, pumping his fist. Nice shot, Elira praised. Beginner's luck, Jake replied with a grin. They finally spotted the outpost, a massive ancient structure floating within the nebula. It was covered in glowing Tyrene symbols, and its energy pulsed softly through the mist. There it is, Elira exclaimed. Jake's excitement was cut short as a blast shook the ship. We're hit. Landing now, Elira shouted, guiding the ship to a rough landing on the outpost's platform. Jake groaned as he unbuckled his seatbelt. Remind me never to fly through a nebula again. Elira smirked. Noted. They rushed out of the ship, blasters in hand. The outpost was eerie and silent, with ancient architecture that seemed untouched for centuries. Where's the map piece? Jake asked, looking around nervously. Elira scanned the area with her device. This way. They moved quickly through the hallways, but Jake's unease grew. This place gives me the creeps. Elira chuckled. Afraid of ghosts, Jake. Jake scoffed. No? Maybe. Okay, yes. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the halls. Jake froze. What was that? Not ghosts, Elira whispered, her eyes narrowing. Cal's men. Of course, Jake muttered. They hurried to a large chamber where a glowing pedestal stood. On it was a small metallic cube covered in ancient symbols. There it is, Elira said, rushing forward. Jake followed, but before they could reach the pedestal, Cal's voice echoed behind them. Going somewhere. Jake and Elira spun around to see Cal and his mercenaries blocking the exit. Cal, tall and menacing with his scared face and dark armor, smirked at them. Hand over the cube, Cal demanded. Elira clenched her jaw. Never. Cal laughed darkly. Then you leave me no choice. A fight broke out. Jake and Elira fired at the mercenaries while dodging their blasts. Jake, using quick thinking, shot a weak part of the ceiling, causing debris to fall and block Cal's men for a moment. Nice move, Elira shouted. Jake grinned. Told you humans are full of surprises. Elira grabbed the cube, and they dashed out through another exit, narrowly escaping Cal's grasp. As they reached their ship and took off, Jake sighed in relief. We made it. Barely, Elira replied, holding the cube tightly. Jake looked at her. So, what now? Elira's face grew serious. Now we find the last piece. Jake groaned. Of course there's one more piece. Elira chuckled softly. Don't worry. We'll get through this. Jake grinned. Yeah, together. As they flew away from the nebula, both knew the final challenge was still ahead. The final choice. The ship soared through the quiet of space, leaving the forbidden nebula behind. Jake sat in the co-pilot's seat, his fingers drumming nervously on his knee. Beside him, Elira held the metallic cube they had retrieved from the outpost, her expression unreadable. So, Jake finally said, breaking the silence, we've got 2 pieces of the map. Where's the last one? Elira didn't answer right away. She stared at the cube, her mind racing. The last piece. It's hidden in the Tyrene vault. Jake raised an eyebrow. Vault? Sounds secure. It is, Elira replied. It's in the heart of Syra, my homeworld. Only someone of royal blood can enter. Jake nodded slowly. Well, good thing we have you, Princess. Elira smirked. Don't get too comfortable, human. Jake chuckled. Wouldn't dream of it. Suddenly, a beep from the console caught their attention. Jake leaned forward and frowned. We've got a problem. Elira's eyes narrowed as she checked the screen. Cal's ship. They're tracking us. Jake groaned. Does this guy ever give up? Apparently not, Elira replied. We need to get to Xyra before he catches us. Jake buckled his seatbelt. Let's do it. Elira pushed the ship to its maximum speed, racing towards Xyra. Jake watched the stars blur past, his heart pounding. Hey, Jake said softly, what happens if Cal gets the heart of Xyra? Elira's face darkened. Then the galaxy is doomed. Jake swallowed hard. No pressure then. As they neared Xyra, Jake gasped at the sight. The planet was breathtaking. Lush green forests, towering mountains, and shimmering blue oceans. Floating cities hovered above the surface, glowing softly in the twilight. Welcome to Xyra, Elira said quietly. It's beautiful, Jake whispered. Elira nodded. Let's hope we can keep it that way. They landed near the royal vault, a massive structure built into a mountain. Elira led Jake through ancient halls filled with glowing symbols and statues of Tyrene ancestors. This place feels old, Jake whispered. It's been here for thousands of years, Elira replied. Only my family knows its secrets. They reached a large door with a glowing handprint in the center. Elira placed her hand on it, and the door slowly opened with a deep rumble. Jake raised an eyebrow. Fancy. Elira smirked. Stay close. They entered a grand chamber where a pedestal held a small glowing crystal, the final piece of the map. Jake let out a relieved sigh. There it is. Elira stepped forward, but before she could reach it, the door behind them slammed shut. Jake spun around, his heart racing. Cal stood there with his mercenaries, a wicked grin on his face. Thank you for leading me here. Elira clenched her fists. How did you find us? Cal chuckled. You really thought I wouldn't place a tracker on your ship? Jake groaned. I knew that beep sounded suspicious. Cal raised his blaster. Now, hand over the map pieces. Elira glared at him. Never. Cal smirked. Then I'll take them. A fierce battle broke out. Jake ducked behind a pillar, firing at the mercenaries while Elira engaged Cal directly. Blaster shots echoed through the chamber as Jake and Elira fought desperately. Jake managed to take down 2 mercenaries, but more kept coming. Elira, we're outnumbered. I know. Elira shouted back, dodging Cal's attacks. Cal fired a blast that knocked Elira to the ground. Jake's eyes widened. Elira. Cal aimed his blaster at her. Goodbye, Princess. Without thinking, Jake jumped in front of Elira, shielding her. Cal's eyes narrowed. Brave, but foolish. Jake gritted his teeth. You want the map? You'll have to go through me. Cal laughed. A human, protecting a Tyrene princess. How noble. Jake smirked. Humans don't give up easy. Cal fired, but Jake rolled out of the way just in time. Elira seized the moment, grabbing her blaster and shooting Cal's weapon from his hand. Jake grinned. Nice shot. Elira smirked. Told you I'm good. Cal growled in frustration. This isn't over. Suddenly, the floor beneath Cal and his mercenaries opened, and they fell into a containment cell below. Elira pressed a button on the wall, sealing them in. Jake blinked. Wait, what just happened? Elira grinned. The vault has its own defenses. Jake laughed. Wish you'd used that earlier. Elira chuckled. Where's the fun in that? They approached the pedestal, and Elira placed the 2 map pieces next to the crystal. The pieces fused together, forming a glowing sphere that revealed the location of the heart of Xyra. Jake whistled. So, that's it. Elira nodded. Yes, the heart is safe. For now. Jake leaned back against a wall, letting out a deep breath. We did it. Elira smiled softly. We did. Jake glanced at her. So, what now? Elira smirked. Well, we are technically married. Jake chuckled. Oh, right. That. Elira raised an eyebrow. You don't seem too upset. Jake grinned. Could be worse. Elira laughed softly. Indeed. As they left the vault, Jake looked at Elira and said, You know, for a bossy alien princess, you're not so bad. Elira smirked. And for a stubborn human, you're tolerable. Jake chuckled. High praise. Together, they walked towards their ship, ready for whatever new adventure awaited them. After all, life with an alien princess was never boring.